welcome back to my channel. My name is Isabel, your favorite English major. So you have to write an essay, huh? If you are a student in any field, if you're starting university, you have general education requirements, if you are in STEM, if you're in literature, whatever you do, wherever you go, you're going to have to write and you have to learn how to write well. So let's learn today. Let's come up with a scenario. It is your first week of school, you get your syllabus, and there you see that this class is going to be requiring an essay. It is going to be a short essay with 3 body paragraphs, an introduction, a conclusion, and a works cited page. You're going to have to turn in maybe the first draft, a second draft, if this is a introductory course, and it has to be from one of the books that you will be reading during the semester. All of this information we have, maybe since you already signed up for the class, syllabus week, but mostly professors already have all of this planned and they're going to give all of these deadlines to you since the beginning. Now it's the time for phase 1, which is planning. Planning is the most important part of your essay experience because it's going to dictate if you are going to have a good time writing this essay or not. Let's stick to our example. In this class, you're reading Frankenstein and you start reading it in October. By November, you are ready to write your essay. So in this stage of planning, you're going to say the first 2 weeks of November, I am going to take notes. I'm going to look over my annotations for my Frankenstein novel. I'm going to watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, maybe do some light Google search about what are the possibilities to write my paper off. This is our 2 weeks planning. At the end of those 2 weeks, our goals are the next. We want to come up with a thesis statement, which includes 3 things that we're going to talk about, and we want to locate those in our book. That I mean that we want to locate potential quotes and what can we talk about them and how do they tie to our thesis. Sometimes we have tons of quotes that we like, paragraphs that we could do things with, but if it's not appealing in answering to our thesis or our main research question, then we have to keep them on the side, maybe use them for a different paper, but focus on what we want to talk about this. With this early planning, we can already kind of write in our planner or bullet journal or Notion or Google Calendar when these deadlines are coming. And these are deadlines that we're giving. If you get used to giving yourself deadlines with all types of projects, even if they're short ones, then your life at university is going to be very, very easy, and your life afterwards as well, because you're not going to need people to give you deadlines because you are going to give them to yourself and respect them. After those first 2 weeks of planning, then we have our 2 weeks of writing. Here we can divide them. Maybe if you don't need 2 weeks of planning, you can do that light research, coming up with thesis statement 1 week, and then the other one, heavy research, depending on your needs. And then 2 weeks of writing, or you can do 2 weeks of planning, 1 week of research, 1 week of writing, depending on how much research you have to do. In the majority of the short essays, the professor is going to provide secondary literature, or it might not even be necessary. So you're probably not going to have to read tons and tons of secondary literature and other essays. Now, within this planning session, you already say 2 weeks of research and planning, 2 weeks of writing, and then 2 weeks of editing, let's say, and giving yourself all of those deadlines and all of that. Here we're going to also write in a piece of paper an outline, writing all of those things down, and we're going to leave space. Here in the video, I'm going to give you an example of what this outline might look like. You can make something fancier, you can do it online, you can do it with a piece of paper, but the important thing is that you visualize the skeleton of your essay already in the planning phase. Some tips for the phase 2, which is research, that I already talked about a bit, is that if you have a shorter essay, you have to be very economical with the sources that you cite, how long you're gonna cite, because you have a limited amount of words, and mostly you want to have your own ideas and your own analysis, your own close reading coming up as the heavy bulk of your body paragraphs instead of someone else's words. The reason why you should learn how to engage with research and with secondary literature since the very beginning is because there's a lot of information out there. So you mostly are learning how to do research. If you're in university, I would recommend you get close to your librarian. Sometimes they have workshops on how to accurately use your university's resources because they might have licenses in X, Y, and Z websites, and they might offer a lot of things that you might not know and could be interesting for you to use in your essays. So go to your librarian or go to your school's website, to the library site, and see what you can find there. Very basic tips are to start big, but then go small very early on. You can't just type Frankenstein. That's what you do in your Google search in the first week of your journey. But when you actually sit down to look for things that you might actually use for your essay, then you really need to center on your thesis statement, maybe on a character that you want to check, and what are this character important. After you've done the research, you have your outline, you have your thesis, you're ready to start the actual writing process. Because I don't know how much you know, let's talk about thesis statements for a bit. A thesis statement should be your question, your main claim. I'm going to claim Frankenstein by Mary Shelley demonstrates 1, 2, 3. That's it. That could be a thesis statement. It's not the best one and it's not fancy, but this is the basic one. This 1, 2, 3 are going to correspond to your body paragraphs. And you're going to see that for your conclusion, you're required to rehearse that thesis statement. Frankenstein proves 1, 2, 3 in this way, showing whatever, or you have to point at why is this important in the conclusion. And in the introduction, you're just introducing this question that you are trying to have people invested in. Then what is a body paragraph? A body paragraph starts with a claim or assertion, which can be something that people can prove right or prove wrong. For example, you can say Frankenstein monster comes up to the world as a blank, and rejection is what turns him into a villainous figure. Now that you have your claim and someone could say that's not true or that it is true, then you have to support this claim with something of substance that comes from the actual text. Then you're going to look at your novel and then you're going to pull up a passage. Let's say the moment with Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster see each other and he smiles at him as he's an innocent creature. You might want to take that. You introduce this quote, put the page number, and then you have to talk about this quote. Rookie mistake number 1 is to just think that the quote speaks for itself and everyone is going to understand this. You have to close read, analyze, however you want to call it, but engage with the quote. This quote says this, it's important, the language, the imagery, try to do that. If it's required for you to have secondary literature, then you can have another quote and that ties with this one, or maybe you find an expert that is also talking about that moment, what this expert says, and then you explain that as well with your own words. At the end of all of this, you're going to need a so what moment at the end of your paragraph. A paragraph is like a little gift that you need to tie nicely with a bow. So it's nice, it's its own unit. If you look at your essay as a conglomerate of these little units that nicely follow each other with a cohesive line, instead of just a massive word that I need to write or the number of words that you need to write, then it might be easier to you to focus on that one paragraph and see that so what needs to tie to your original claim, so your thesis statement, and your specific claim of that paragraph. If I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but if your thesis statement, Frankenstein demonstrates 1, 2, 3, and then we say that plus 1, that is your claim, as Frankenstein monster is born as a clean slate, and the rejection of society turns him into a dangerous individual. We proved that, and then you have to say that again in another way. It is shown by moments like these that Frankenstein monster has the opportunity to do good and to have human feelings. However, constant rejection turns him against humanity and makes him antagonize humanity. And again, I'm doing all of this on the fly. It is not fancy, but you get the gist of how the basic structure should be. In that also, so what, you need to point out what your next paragraph is going to look like. If you look at it like that, it is brilliant, it is a great structure, and once you get the hang of it, you are never going to be confused again. Because that next paragraph is pointing at the second is pointing at the third points at the conclusion, and the conclusion points at the introduction. So we're always going like this. We're always referencing one another. That's why it's very easy for professors or for anyone else external from you when they read to be like, I don't think your structure is very well done. because it's lacking that interconnection. It is lacking that structure that makes it flow. If you follow my recommendation of having an outline and having a defined thesis statement, what you're going to be doing for writing is something called fill in the blanks. Because we have our skeleton, you see the empty spots and you see, okay, I need a claim, I need an example, I need an explanation, I need significance, I need another one. So you're like, okay, claim, example, explain it. It's very fast. And if you don't have a lot of experience writing this type of essays, or if you have a lot of things going on, this makes your mind focus. You're like, okay, I need a claim, I need a quote, I need secondary literature, and I need to focus on this paragraph and then the other. It might feel robotic. It might not be the type of writing you like. If you're more on the creative side, it's okay. It is a formula. It is robotic. But this is just gets you the first draft. And we're going to talk about revising and second draft and third draft. But this is a foolproof way to have your structure and have everything you need. After that, you can add things, you can make it more sophisticated, you can make it sound more natural to your personal voice. But if you do that and you fill in the blanks, then there's no way your essay is going to be mediocre or bad. At least it's going to be average and it's going to have what you need. And if you constantly keep doing this, your brain is going to get better and better at thinking academically and writing academically, that maybe you won't need to do as much revising afterwards or add more. Depending on how you do your planning and how many deadlines you give to yourself, you can really divide everything to its minimum thing. What I mean is that sometimes for essays that are very long, I say, I'm going to write a page a day of this body paragraph. I'm going to write a page of chapter 1, or I'm going to write all chapter 1, depending on how much work I need to give myself. But sometimes I go, I'm going to write a paragraph. And that's my task for that day in that assignment, write a paragraph. And it's something powerful that takes away a lot of stress if you think about it. Because if you have, I need to write an essay, well, you're not done until you're done. You feel this constant stress because you're not done with this assignment. But if you divide it into all these minimum pieces, you can have your breakfast, do the paragraph that you have to do, that you assigned to yourself today, and then you're done with that for today, because tomorrow there's a new day and you have all of this time to do something else, to do other assignments. So it depends on how much you want to divide it, how much time you have, but I really recommend you do that, especially because we started super early, because we did all this planning. Phase 4 is reviewing or editing your essay. And let's say that in your planning, you gave yourself 2 weeks for this. This is plenty of time, especially for a shorter essay. And what you're probably going to do is try to make it shorter or make it longer. I always have the problem of making it shorter because I write way too much. That's when you go with a fine comb every sentence and you read it out loud. Reading it out loud makes you notice that maybe you're being too wordy, maybe you're not having a good grasp of the concepts, maybe you're repeating yourself too much, because as you can tell, the structure already involves quite a lot of repetition. So if you add even more repetition, it's going to be apparent that you don't have a lot of things to say, or you might have a lot of things to say, but it gets blurry because of all that repetition that isn't necessary. Something else that you need to catch on is grammar mistakes, structure mistakes, citation mistakes, making sure your essay is cohesive. As we said, every sentence, every quote needs to respond back to that thesis. All of those body paragraphs are working for that thesis to be true, because that's what you want. So make sure that everything that you're including in your essay is necessary, that is helping you prove your thesis, that is relevant, and that is well supported by textual evidence. Sometimes we like making way bigger claims, which is, I think, something learned from the way that we speak in normal conversations. We say, oh yeah, everyone knows that. Abstain from those type of arguments that, oh yeah, this is so well known, everyone is going to think the same, and you think that you don't have to explain it or prove it. You do have to. That's just how academic writing works. Nothing is assumed. Nothing is already common knowledge. You have to show it. Something that helps you out edit as well is to go back and say, the houses represent the structure of society. That's your sentence. Then tell to yourself, how? Why do they represent the structure of society? What is the structure of society? Because for you, it might be very easy to say, oh yeah, sure, the structure of society. But then a reader doesn't take your class, or that doesn't live in your brain, will be like, What do you mean with structure of society? If you say that to yourself with every sentence you have, you're going to realize that you might be making your reader assume a lot of things and to fill in the blanks. This is perfectly okay for regular writing, creative writing, but for academic writing, we have to be concise, we want to be clear, and we want to make sure that there is as least gray areas as possible. So if you go by every sentence and you act like you're not the writer and you're just like, I don't know, what do you mean here? What do you mean there? And that takes me to my next point is, and if you can, and if you have friends, have a friend read it for you. If you don't have friends, a lot of campuses offer writing services, but by then you have to sign up. You cannot just go 1 minute before the deadline. That's why we have to take time to actually schedule revising and drafting weeks, because you should be working on this since the moment you start your research, but it's a works cited page. Make sure that you know early on what your professor is requiring, which is MLA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, whatever style of citation that they require. Make sure that you know it, that you master it. And if you don't know it or master it, get close to your librarian. They often have workshops on how to cite. My personal take is that you should memorize how to cite. I know there's Citation Machine and there are websites that you can already get the citation from. There is Zotero, Notion also has a citation function, Word has a citation function. Doesn't matter, you should learn how to do that, because what, you're going to go into 4 years of college without having this, and you always have to check an external website praying that they get it right. At least learn the basics. Once you get the hang of it, of how it is organized and how it is made, it actually makes a lot of sense. And if you master at least the one that you're going to need the most, then everything else is going to be quite easy for you. There are handbooks, there are YouTube videos, librarian workshops. You can check websites when they teach you how to learn this, all the rules. The thing is that they often change the rules. They give additions, they count on things that they didn't count before, they get rid of things. So make sure that you also stay on top of all of that. Works cited pages, if they are in MLA format, you have to have a hanging indent. They have to be alphabetical and double spaced. Useful things to remember: do not commit plagiarism. It is a serious crime. It gets you expelled from university, failing your class. It's overall not giving yourself a fair chance. Even if you don't get caught, you know that whatever grade you get is not your grade, and whatever words that they praise, they're not your words, and you're in school to learn. If you're in an introductory course and you click on this video because you have no idea how to write an essay, you can approach your professor, you can approach your writing tutors, and they're gonna teach you how to actually do this. They don't expect you to be the best writer ever right now. But if you don't even try, then I don't know what you're doing at university, why you go into debt, why are you making your parents pay all of this, or whoever that finances your education. If you're not taking this seriously, then I don't understand why do it anyways. But if you're watching this video, I guess that you actually want to try, so props to you. I am sure that if you take your time, if you follow the instructions, and if you give yourself a fair chance for your ideas to shine, then the professor is gonna see that, and even if it's not a perfect A, they're gonna know that there's a big room for improvement and a big space for you to continue your education. So please, no plagiarism. It doesn't help anyone. You're not fooling anyone. Another good idea is that even if your class doesn't require you to turn in a draft to your professors and do essays check-ins, maybe if you go to the professor's office hours, they would read a part of your essay, or the TA would read it, or someone else's. Do those essay check-ins with your friends or with yourself, and make sure that someone else that is also in the class approves it. Or sometimes the professors say this thesis statement is too broad, this idea is too big, or it's too small, or it's too basic, and they already from early on, the people who are actually going to grade your work and that assign your work are giving you extra feedback. So that's about it. Read your essay multiple times out loud. That's when you catch most of the mistakes. I've always been against writing everything 2 hours before the deadline, the same day of the deadline, 1 day before the deadline. I just don't have that magical skill that many people have apparently, of writing an average or at least good enough essay a few hours before. I am not like that. It is okay to recognize that I don't have that skill. And if you're not like that, or if just that would give you an immense amount of stress, I would recommend my way of doing it, that is with planning and separating everything into little tasks, and they fill up the blanks. Now, this section of the video I want to dedicate to possible themes to write about, because I know that if you are a beginner, if you're just starting at university, or you have never taken a literature course and you're trying to write about literature, you wonder, well, what should I write about? The best answer is to write about what you find interesting. While you're writing and annotating, of course, because you should be annotating and being active in class participation, you're going to notice that you like some things more than others. And that is totally human. If you feel that you're attracted more to conversations about gender, or conversations about class, or conversations about race, or you really like character analysis, or you are more into analyzing language and how it works, or you're into looking at motifs and themes, all of those are important for you to recognize as interesting things, and how those can be applicable, or how those can turn into a potential essay topic. I say topic because sometimes we need a topic before we have a thesis, or sometimes people find it easier to conceptualize finding a topic that we want to talk about and then coming up with a thesis statement. So what are some very basic, very easy topics and themes to bring on? We have all of the human dilemmas. Man versus the machine, or man versus industrialization, industrialization or society against the countryside, uncivilized places, etc., etc., etc. We have man versus morality, man versus religion, man versus woman, man versus nature, man versus community, or man versus capitalism, and just anything that has to do with the individual against something else. And I said versus, but it doesn't mean like, oh, we're actually against, but it just like, if you're in your text, you detect that there is a conflict there between the individual and whatever else that goes against it. That is a very common thing to write about. If you have parallel moments, let's say that the beginning of your novel, there are two people talking in a carriage, and the end of the novel, there's also two people talking in a carriage, and the conversation is similar but different, or maybe they the same characters, and a lot of things have happened in between. You can talk about those parallel moments, duality, dichotomies. All of those are very interesting to write about, especially if you have a shorter essay, because you can already reduce it to scene 1 and scene 2 and like compare them. How do they evolve? How are they different from one another? Juxtapositions of either characters, themes. You can look at how the characters speak and how are they perceived. You can talk about post-colonialism, race, gender. You can talk about structuralism, post-structuralism. You can talk about surveillance. You can talk about the historical period that this novel is developed and how it deals with historical context. I wouldn't recommend you writing about the author's life or anything biographical, because that's usually frowned upon and not very productive. You want to spark cool conversations, and mostly for shorter essays that don't have a lot of research, you want to focus on the primary text. Trust what you like. Trust what you find interesting. That is all from me, I think. Good luck with your essays. I hope this video is helpful. My name is Isabel. Thanks for watching. Keep reading, and when you're not, follow me on all my social media, link down below. I'll see you all tomorrow to continue our back to school series, and have a successful semester. Bye!